Hi, everyone. I would like to welcome you to today's panel session on migration and media. In today's panel, we have two distinguished scholars who will cover Afghan migration waves in Iran to migration narratives in Germany. Each presenter will speak for about 20 minutes, and then we will use the remaining of the time for your questions and comments. Please post your questions and comments on Q&A as you are listening to these presentations. Our first speaker is Kai Gehring, a professor of political economy and sustainable development in the economics department at the University of Bern. Among other topics, he works on narratives, specifically about nature, climate change, and migration, using natural language processing and data from newspapers and social media to understand origins and effects of narratives. Our second speaker is GholamReza Keshavarz Haddad, an associate professor of economics at the Graduate School of Management and Economics at Sharif University of Technology. His research focuses on empirical household behavior using big data and applied labor economics. I would like to thank and welcome our speakers and give the floor to Dr. Gehring. Please, Kai.
Thank you very much. I'm trying to share. So I've actually been using a lot of Microsoft Teams the last year, so I have to get back to Zoom. Kindly tell me if it works.
It's working. Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Maybe let me this. Okay. Oh, they really changed some things. Perfect. So, warm welcome, everyone. I'm really excited to be here and give this presentation. Thanks, Mohammed and others for the invitation. And I hope I can tell you something interesting about immigrant narratives in Germany that also has a broad implication. So as you know, there's a very large literature now in economics about narratives and the meaning and importance of narratives in shaping both beliefs and preferences, and then also decision making. In this paper, we contribute to this literature, but we focus specifically on narratives about immigrants in the media, and we connect this to stereotyping about different immigrant groups. This is joint work with Joop Adema, who's still at LMU Munich and just finished his PhD, and my good friend Pano Putwara, who is leading the IFO migration section at the IFO Institute. So why look at the media and why study immigration? Well, I'll give you one example, probably infamous by now, and that is when Trump spoke about immigrants as pet eating or claiming they even eat other things too. So this was, of course, probably untrue, but this was a very prominent narrative that he put out there before the election and was widely covered by the media. So the media played, if you think back of like Anthony Downs and like how as political economists we would think about the economy and voting processes, there are the politicians who run for office, and then there are a mass of voters, but they're usually not very well informed about politics. And then there are information intermediaries in between. And we think of the media as playing this role as information intermediaries. And of course, by repeating these narratives, even though it might be fake news, the media makes this available to many citizens and shapes potentially the beliefs of these citizens and voters about immigrants and potentially their voting and their other actions. And what role does the media play? Of course, they write themselves, but they also select what to write about, what themes to write about, because of course, there are many others and potentially more positive themes about immigrants. for instance, immigrants as entrepreneurs that bring jobs and innovation. And by making this selection, of course, journalists play a very important role in shaping opinions and beliefs. Well, going back from this Trump example, and I hope maybe it's the last time I have to mention him today. I'm a bit fed up with him, I have to admit. Why should be interested in immigration and narratives? Well, I guess all who followed an election in a European country or North American country over the last decade would agree that immigration is really at the center of political discussion. So it's been shaping the recent US election, but it also shaped the last elections in Italy and Germany and France, and just led to the rise of a far-right country in my home country in Germany. We also know from a couple of really, really nice studies that were published over the last years that specific narratives, really only the difference in the exposure to different narratives really shapes how people's decisions are made. And that even accounts for high profile, really high stakes decisions like about important financial decisions or about whether get vaccinated or not. This is generally about any narratives, but we also know more specifically that the framing of narratives in the media matters. A very interesting study, Alessina and co-authors show that when comparing if people are exposed just to facts about immigrants or being exposed to specific stories about how immigrants behave and what their motivations are, that the stories and the framing are much more effective in changing preferences. And just a very neat, simple example of demonstrating how media plays a role in, how could you say, in moderating this relationship. Milena Jurilova shows in her AR paper that even changing a single term, even changing the term illegal immigrant to something more positive, already affected beliefs and preferences about migration policies. So in this paper, the first thing we want to contribute is we want to go beyond this very general discussion and go this very specific discussion about specific narratives or specific terms and provide a much more systematic understanding of what are both the economic and the cultural narratives and the relative importance about immigration. The second thing we study in this paper is that, of course, immigrants are not a monolithic block. I mean, I'm an immigrant now in Germany, and there are immigrants from Germany, but then there's also immigrants from France, from Italy, from many other different countries, including from the US, and then there are refugees and work immigrants. So there are many different groups. And there's a very interesting prior finding in the literature how people think about groups. And that is, if there are groups who have been there for a longer time, but they're still considered as part of the out group, so not yet part of the in group, not really part of what is the host society. But then a new group arrives, this actually shifts the perception of the established groups. So when a new group arrives, for instance, when in some of these papers I cite here, when the Mexicans arrived in large numbers in the US, suddenly African Americans were considered more often to be part of the in-group of the Americans. So we have a prior that when a new group arrives, we think that this should positively affect all existing established groups. However, and this is something we exploit in the paper, there's also another interesting paper which suggests that people stereotype a lot. And specifically, what does stereotyping mean here? It means assume there are two groups and they have certain characteristics that are very visible to other people. And then the paper suggests that people generalize from one group to the other based on characteristics that these two groups share. And we will show that this type of stereotyping also seems to affect how people react to the arrival of a new immigrant group. Specifically, the setting we study is in the period 2010 to 2019. We have the arrival in Germany of a new large group of Arab Middle East origin, mostly Syria and Afghanistan, but many others. And then we study how this affects two established groups, First, the Eastern Europeans, which have been there for many decades, and the Turks, which have been in Germany since they came as guest workers in the 1950s and 60s. So this paper then also shows that there is heterogeneity across groups and the role of media in shaping the dynamics of this group perceptions. And we examine if this prior that we have, based on the existing literature, that new groups always positively affect the established groups, if that also holds in the more contemporaneous context and during the refugee crisis that we experienced. Before moving on, can someone give me a thumbs up that audio is fine? All good?
Absolutely, thank you.
Oh, everything is working.
Perfect. It's always the hard thing with online presentations when you don't see people nodding and you don't know if you're on track. Thanks, perfect. So there's a very large literature on this, both in narrative economics, media economics, stereotypes. And I think we make a contribution to these different types of literatures, but I could just recommend read all of them. They're all great, but I don't want to use my 20 minutes for this. So why do we study Germany? Well, first, of course, I personally am interested in Germany and from Germany, but I think there's a better case to be made, and that is Germany is by now a very diverse multicultural society. Depending on how you count, there are about 70% of Germans being foreign born, and if you also count second and third generation immigrants, about a third of Germans by now have a migrant origin. So it's a very diverse country. It's also quite by now representative of many other European countries by having this very diverse population, but also by featuring the rise of first a populist far-right party, and recently in the last election, even a far-left anti-immigrant party. So for quite some while, Germany didn't have these dynamics and didn't have anti-immigrant parties that really managed to establish themselves at the federal level. But after the refugee crisis, this really changed. Third factor why Germany is a good place to study, it took in the largest amount of refugees, both I think overall, and I think even in terms of percentage during 2015. So it not only has a large immigrant established population, but it also had this large inflow of new immigrants. Finally, studying the media, we will focus on newspapers. And of course, we all are interested in the role that social media plays, and I have other papers where we do that. But in this paper, we really wanted to focus on newspapers and journalists. So all the writing we have is not by normal people like you get on social media, but it's really of journalists, because we want to study journalists and journalism and newspapers as this in this role as the information intermediaries. The sample of data we have, it's kind of a four-step process. First, we go to a newspaper database called Factiva, and we use a keyword search to download all articles about immigration for 2005 to 2019, so covering the whole period around the refugee crisis. Then we go down from this article level, basically to the sentence level. Why? Because articles have a hugely different length, and you cannot well compare and analyze with NLP or AI a very long and a very short article. So we select the sentence as a common unit of analysis, and we broadly, it's a much more complicated process, but we broadly combine both dictionaries and modern natural language processing tools in Python to first classify, is a sentence about immigration and immigrants? Then second, is it about what type of theme, a more economy or cultural theme? And finally, and the important part here, we're not doing a sentiment analysis where we just say something is positive or negative, but finally, within such a theme, is this a sentence that is positive, portrays immigrants as heroes, that is neutral, or is it negative and portrays immigrants as the villains that are, for instance, exploiting their welfare state? What are these themes? Well, basically, we follow Alesina and Tabellini, who say they are both economy and culture themes. And in economy, we distinguish between work. So what do you contribute to the workplace in terms of as workers? Entrepreneurship, I think quite clear, and welfare state. And in terms of culture, we look at criminality, and there's been a lot of research about criminality. We look at cultural integration. That is, for instance, have people integrated culturally? Do they positively contribute to the culture? Do they speak the language well? Are the kids going to school? All this. And the third important one is foreign religion. This includes, I know this is arbitrary, what are non-indigenous European religions, and it's mostly Islam, but it also includes mentions of Hindus and Sikhs and some others. So it's basically everything except Christian and Judaism. Yes, we do have a control theme, just to clarify this, that is immigrants as victims, irrespective of themes. So in these themes, it's always about the immigrants, how the immigrants are treated or behaving. And then there's basically a control theme, which turns out to be important, which is, are immigrants victims of right-wing propaganda or of crimes or something else? Otherwise, those categories above would be misleading. Ida, you had a question?
No, I'm fine. I'm listening.
Okay, perfect. Sorry.
Thank you.
Just examples, I'll just read out two, or we don't have enough time. One that would be, for instance, immigrant criminality. Juvenile offenders with a migration background usually come from families that are not willing to integrate. This is immigrant criminality. I think actually, arguably, you could say because of the not willing to integrate, it might also be culture, but because it's not explicit, it would just be criminality. And it's, of course, a negative sentence within the theme of criminality. One in welfare is most migrants come from Romania and Bulgaria. They often arrive in bitter poverty and without an educational degree. And this is nice to just illustrate, well, what does our algorithm do that we developed? Well, it connects, it basically uses the word migrants, then it depicts the word from, and Romania and Bulgaria. It recognizes that the from says from Romania and Bulgaria, so they're really from these places. They are not in Romania and Bulgaria, then we would exclude this. And then it assigns this to the group of Eastern Europeans. And then because of they, it understands that they refers to Romania and Bulgaria, and it is the immigrants from Bulgaria and Romania that arrive without an educational degree. Of course, they're not just negative ones. I'll give you one positive one. In the meantime, Bassam has been doing an apprenticeship at the company Rosenberger for almost a year, has a small apartment in Palling, so very positive. And now the most important thing in Germany, of course, and actively plays in the Palling football team. So there are positive sentences, and of course, it's the most positive thing you can do in Germany. You have an apprenticeship and you play in the football team. So this is both positive in terms of an economy work, but also positive cultural integration. Any questions on the themes? All good. So now we basically, the first thing we study, which is descriptively, I don't make any causal claims, it's just how important are economy or culture themes. Because of course, as economists, we mostly study economy themes, right? We study how well are immigrants integrated in the labor market? How often do they get welfare, their dependency ratios, whatever. But it turns out we might actually, maybe not surprisingly after Brexit and the recent US election, we're not quite covering what most people seem to care about and media write about. So on the right, you see all economy themes, and on the left, you see all culture themes, and this is just the frequency over time. What you see is welfare and work. It's not that it doesn't matter. This is still a large amount of articles, but it's trumped by immigrant criminality. But even, and that was a surprise to me, even immigrant criminality is actually trumped a lot by culture and religion. So most, and this is not like your average German, but this is like journalists as usually reputed newspapers with a good reputation, they do mostly write about culture and religion and then crime and work when it comes to immigrants. So maybe with that in mind, we shouldn't be exposed so surprised how some recent elections turned out, and that just claiming immigrants are not bad for the labor market, as many papers do, missed a bit what people cared about. How are themes in terms of being positive or negative? Well, the important headline here is, you see in green the positive and red the negative, is that there are some themes like entrepreneurship, work, culture integration that are overwhelmingly positive with differences. And then there are others, crime unsurprisingly, but also religion, which have positive aspects, like positive role foreign religion plays and religion generally plays, but also that are overwhelmingly negative. So an important takeaway here is journalists do not only decide how to write about a theme, but the most important decision might be which theme to write about. And when they choose to write about crime or religion, that's or welfare, that's overwhelmingly going to be negative. So I'm looking at time, and I will be short now. So then we study what happens to established groups when the new group arrives. And there, as I said, we study Turkish and Eastern Europeans. We do not study Southern Europeans in detail. Well, why? Because there are actually not so many articles about Southern Europeans. And if anything, they're mostly about Italian pizzerias. And maybe it's probably just a sign they're actually quite well integrated. The established groups, it's what we call Arab and Middle Eastern immigrants, and there we account for people. This is a GPT-4-based classification, all people from all different countries that are within this regions. It actually doesn't include Iran. I should say this here because we assigned this to being Persia and not being part of Arab Middle East, but we can debate this. It actually doesn't matter much. There's not many articles about Iranians, turns out. So then what do we see? And I look at the time, I have to be short, so I only give you the headline result. First, we see there are huge differences across groups. So it's really not true that immigrants are all portrayed the same. You see on the left here, this is the average, but then you see Arab, Middle East, and Turkey. And you see there are differences, but there's a big overlap in terms of the culture and foreign religion being quite important. In contrast, when you look at Southern Europeans and Eastern Europeans, that fits much more how we as economists usually think about immigration. It's a lot about work, it's about entrepreneurship. When it comes to Eastern Europeans, a lot about welfare. And then, yes, culture still matters, religion, crime, it matters, but it's much more what we expected. Also see Southern Europeans, Eastern Europeans, they're much more similar, and Turkish immigrants, Arab Middle East, they're also much more similar. Now, what do we find going back to the Fuca and Tabellini expectation? This is just number of articles. We do look at the refugee crisis. So broadly to summarize, we study the period 2013 to 2019. And the results, in a nutshell, this is the sentiment of the groups before. So you see, let me say Arab Middle East, while this is slightly positive, I can't zoom in, but it is slightly positive. Turkey, it's also slightly positive, and Eastern Europe, it's all very similar. Now the refugee crisis happens, and this is the result. Arab Middle East, very much more negative sentiment. And then the interesting effect is instead of both established groups improving, we actually find that the Turkish perception of the Turks is actually deteriorating a lot, while the perception of the Eastern Europeans improves. I don't have time to go much into detail, but happy to say much more in the Q&A. What we think is going on, there is this divide, and what we think is going on, and we show evidence for in the paper, is that there's this event which really reversed sentiments about the Arab Middle East group. And then there's a lot of stereotyping. And what we find is that after the event, there's still a strong positive correlation between Arab and Middle East and Turkey in terms of sentiment correlation. But there's actually a reversal between Eastern Europeans and Arab Middle East, and they start to be negatively correlated. So you really see this divide between the two groups, where the Turks are influenced by the perceptions and writing about Arab Middle East, and the Eastern Europeans are not. And this does not, I have more details, this does not seem to be explained by a fundamental shift in actual data. Because you might, of course, think, well, maybe Turkish immigrants just performed much worse or committed a lot of crimes, but this does really not seem to be the case. So the crime rate of Turkish immigrants actually decreased, and on welfare, it's quite mixed. I have more to say about this, and we have more experiment plans to pin this down, but let me stop here and looking forward to the second presentation and the Q&A.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Kai. Very interesting topic, good coverage. We move to Dr. GholamReza Keshavarz Haddad for his presentation on Afghan immigrants in Iran. Please.
Yes,
Floor
thank you.
is yours.
Can I upload my file?
Yes, you can share your screen.
Yes, share screen. Thank you. I found some.
Thank you. It's working.
Yeah. Sorry for the delay. It was at my end, but not at my control. Finally, I could connect to Zoom. Thank you very much. And I would like to start from the beginning. Yes. This is the topic that I'm going to present in this webinar. But first of all, I would like to thank two webinar organizers and to my colleagues, Mr. Hassan Karami and Reza Bokayi, who truly helped me, and I deeply thank them. The context, you may know that we have 4 waves of Afghan immigration to Iran, which starts from 1978 up to 2021. The first one started at 1978 after the Soviet Union invasion to Afghanistan. And then the second wave started 1989 after the civil war between different Mujahideen groups. And the third wave happened in 1995 after rule of Taliban in Afghanistan in the first round. And the final one, which is very important for us, happened in 2021 after Taliban second takeover of the Afghanistan. We think this wave is important for labor market of Iran and the society as well. But after this huge immigration from Afghanistan to Iran, there was big concerns between political activists, NGOs, and workers and employers. For example, the representative of Supreme Labor Council announced that Afghani people came to Iran and they are taking over the lucrative jobs, but Iranian workers cannot find jobs. Most of them are unemployed and they are immigrating to Iraq and other countries. But following this concern that appeared in Iran, there was a street demonstration and sometimes street clash between Iranian workers and Afghan workers. Our main objective is to analyze this labor market shock on the wages and employment rate in Iran. However, we are well aware that Iran, similar to other countries and other societies, may face with social challenges like crime rate, dwelling prices, and many things. But in this presentation, we are focusing on the wages and on employment in Iran. We believe that this change in the Afghanistan is exogenous for Iranian labor market because the administration of Ashraf Ghani collapsed very soon, and it was unpredictable. And the Taliban group take over the Kabul and other Boleswalis and the cities and counties very fast. So the Afghani people had to emigrate to Iran without any pre-plan. But after the quick takeover of the Taliban on Afghanistan, this wave of migration suddenly began, and its sudden mass of Afghani immigrants and refugees came to Iran, and it is a labor supply shock in the labor market of Iran. This graph shows that in the summer of 2021, there was an acceleration in the population of Afghani workers in Iran, and the trend increased sharply. But they distributed in different provinces of Iran, but not in all provinces, because based on the decision of Interior Ministry, settlement of Afghani migrants in some provinces were forbidden. The white provinces are the regions that the Afghani people were not allowed to settle there. But the Sistan-Baluchistan province is different. Sistan-Baluchistan is a forbidden province for Afghani immigrants, but this is the pathway from Afghanistan to Iran. Therefore, we can see some Afghani families, households, and employers who are living in Sistan-Baluchistan, but they do not stay there for long term. They have to leave Afghanistan because this is a forbidden. This situation provides us an identification strategy, because some provinces has even zero Afghani residents, but some of them have, for example, 30 over 1,000, 40 over 1,000 household or employees. Therefore, this law in Iran, together with the data that we have, will help us to identify the effect of presence of Afghani immigrants in the labor market of Iran on the wages and on employment status of local workers. The data that we use includes LFS and HIS, and we use the well-known deep methodology, and in this methodology, the treatment group includes provinces that Afghan immigrants
Oh, it seems we disconnected.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe we can give him maybe we'll reconnect. Maybe we can wait a few seconds.
Yeah, we wait a little bit. Yeah, internet connection in Iran doesn't work well. We can move
Did you
to
guys
the
also? Yeah. Did you guys also understand that he's using only the extensive margin, so only having refugees or not, or also using the intensive margin, how many they got?
That's a great question for him.
Yeah, I don't know how to answer. Do we want to move to the questions for Kai while we are waiting for GholamReza to come back?
I think he used just the binary, allow or not allow immigration.
That would make sense, yeah. I think GholamReza is back, no? No, he just dropped
No,
out.
he's not back. That's why I'm asking, just move forward with questions for Kai and then come back. Oh, he's back. Let's see if we can connect.
Yeah, just wait a moment.
Kai?
Yes, yes.
So one question I had was about the income status of the migrants, both new and established, whether there is data. I guess very hard to get data on all of them. That would mean collecting a lot of individual specific characteristics. But the one that might be more easily controlled is if one could repeat your work for different periods of time, characterized by economic status of Germany. Just a comparison between basically good times and bad times.
So you're getting at whether this is just driven by economic upturns or downturns?
Yeah,
or is it more about how normal are these fluctuations, or how special are they?
More of an interest if that makes a difference. You know, if the going is good, one needs a lot of workers, then they get absorbed more easily without competing with local employment. Whereas in recessions or perceptions thereof, things could get a lot worse. The other thing relatedly is the threshold.
No, that's a good comment. Now I'll note this because we don't have all the data, but we have data starting in 2005. So we could check the global financial crisis.
The other is this thresholding effect, that as long as number of immigrants is below a certain number, then it's more easily absorbed. When it gets beyond that, or the perception is that there are many, then the attitudes change. Again, that's a time issue.
Yeah, no, this is a good question. So the question was like is there a threshold, probably depending on the overall native population, until after which people might get fed up or change their attitude toward immigrants? This is actually something I had started working on with like Vicky Fuca and Marco Tabolini on a paper about the US, which we never finished. So we do have those data, and we have them at the local level. And so your expectation would be that this amplifies the reaction.
That's my prior.
The more immigrants there are, the more negative. Okay, no, it's a good comment.
It's the two things are combined. Like if I mean, imagine the beginnings of US, they were desperate for labor. There was very good attitude about getting more and more come in, right? That was the big problem. And then at some point, the absorption, economic absorption, both because of the number of entries, but also economic conditions combine to change the attitudes. It's a theory.
Yeah, no, it's a good theory, and that's why I actually started writing this unfinished paper back then. And it's true. I don't think it has been proven in a systematic way.
The
problem is exogeneity in the allocation of immigrants, where of course you can do some shift share type instrument. But no, I think it's a very good idea. I'll put it on our list of to-dos.
Thank you. It seems GholamReza is here. Let's move to remaining of his presentation on Afghan immigrants. Yes, please, Dr. Haddad.
Thank you very much, Aida. And sorry for the inconvenience that happened. These are out of our control. Sorry for that to all.
It's okay, we understand.
Our findings suggest that there is not a big decrease in the wage level of workers in Iran. It it is not more than 30%. And regarding the unemployment rate, we couldn't find any significant increase in the unemployment probability of Iranian workers, but we could find negative impact of Afghani workers on the unemployment status of female, which this impact is negative. It means that presence of Afghani people provides condition through backward and forward linkage that is formed in the labor market, new jobs and new vacancies for females. This is the short story that we have about the or preliminary result. But before starting the identification strategy explanation, I want to show that these are the trend of total Afghani working population to the native workforce in some provinces like Sistan, Balochistan, Semnan, Isfahan, Kerman. All of these provinces are permitted for Afghani immigrant residents. But after 20 and 21, there is not positive change. Even in some cases, we have a negative change in this ratio. But we have several provinces in which, after this influx of Afghani immigrants, the ratio of Afghani workers to the native workers is increasing. It means we may have bigger impact in these provinces. So as a starting point, this group of provinces can be our treatment groups. Mostly Afghani workers are employed in these 15 ISIC and ISCO codes. The first on the top is the simple road and construction workers, swing and clothing industries, construction industries, especially specialist workers, leather industry workers with machine. For example, in Khorasan Razavi, most of leather industries workers are Afghani, and Iranian workers are not working in because of the hard condition that exists in this workspace. So most of the Afghanis, when they came to Iran, they started working in construction, agriculture, and service sectors, which relies heavily on the low-cost and manual skills, manual works. But our mindset is that mostly Afghani people come to Iran and work in simple works. But this graph shows that number of skilled workers, skilled Afghani workers to unskilled is increasing during the time, because most of Afghani people came to Iran and start to work as a simple worker, but little by little, they join to skilled jobs. For example, they work as plumber, electrician, carpenter, stonemaster, and some of them are working as mechanics and others. So they are progressing in the labor market of Iran. And this graph shows that the simple workers, the number of simple workers in Iran, simple Afghani workers in Iran is increasing. But the acceleration of skilled Afghani workers is more than the simple one. It shows that they are going little by little and they are engaging in more complex jobs. And finally, one more fact shows that number of workers, the percent of workers in activities like agricultural and livestock farming, garment and leather industry, and road and construction, they were increasing over this time, and mostly after 2021, which the shock happened. Here we have the average of wages, hourly wage for the workers, for treatment group and the control group. The blue one average wage for control group, and the red one belongs to the treatment group. After 20 and 21, average wage of treatment group starts to approaches toward the control group. It means that we may find a very modest decrease in the wage level. If we restrict the workers to skilled and unskilled, then we can see that the average wage of unskilled workers decreased and approach to the in treatment group to the control group. And a similar pattern we have for unemployment rate in Iran. But the unemployment rate for control groups are higher than the treatment group, but they are not different statistically in 95 confidence interval. If I can come back to the map, which is very important for our identification, you can see that we have these dark blue provinces in which presence of Afghani immigrants were permitted. But in some cases, for example, in Golestan, we have a few Afghani workers. So although the Golestan is a prohibited province for residents of Afghanis, so we can change and play with this treatment group to check the sensitivity and robustness of our finding. So come back. So we defined it 9 treatment group, and start from the top, and the biggest one, the biggest group of provinces, and go toward the bottom, in which all treatment groups are Yazd, Qom, and Ghazvin. Okay. Our regression analysis includes a definitive, very simple definitive, but enriched with explanatory variables. We have 2 models, the log wage as a dependent variable, and the probability of being unemployed. For the first part of our presentation, the result, it shows that the decrease in the hourly wage, the logarithm of hourly wage for the treatment group 1 is about 5%. If we go toward the economically weaker provinces, it increases up to 30%, 13%. This is for full sample. When we restrict or sample to subpopulation, I mean, for the man, the result stays unchanged. And the change is very modest. Then we split the sample to the man with education less than diploma. In a very rare case, it is significant, but the magnitude of impact is still 13%. If we switch to the marginal effect of being unemployed, rarely we can find negative impact. For example, positive impact. For example, in the weaker provinces with small labor market, the marginal effect of being in the treatment group on the status of being unemployed is less than 0.005. But this is negative, and the magnitude is similar to that one, to the full sample for women. It means that in the treated provinces, presence of immigrants causes a decrease in the probability of being unemployed for women. It means that they are working in an unfilled occupation. And by working in the unfilled occupations, they provide facilities, I mean the linkage, to create a job for women. So it is helping the labor market, at least for women. But we rarely can see positive impact of presence of Afghanis for labor market of men. For example, in the second block, we can see statistically very modest effect on the probability of being unemployed for men. But in big, economically large provinces, the marginal effect is not highly significant for men with men and women with education less than diploma. But again, for women with diploma and more, this is significant, but negative. As a robustness check, we did more regressions, but by changing the control group. We extended our control groups by, for example, Golestan province is not a permitted province for Afghan residents. But in the LFS, we could find a few workers who are working in Golestan province. So we exclude Golestan province from our control group. Then we came back, exclude Golestan and the South Khorasan. And by the way, we find this final result. Again, the effect of presence of Afghani immigrants on the probability of being unemployed is not more than 5%, but it is negative. It means that presence of Afghani people provides facilities and facilitates to create new jobs for Iranian workers. This is all that we have provided for this webinars, but I'm ready to give more detail in the discussion part. Sorry for the disconnection and the inconvenience that I made for you.
Thank you very much. Let me move to questions on Q&A first, and then we move to some direct questions on chat. Kamyar, would you like to let audience ask their questions, or?
Absolutely. However you wish. You are the boss.
Yeah, we can let them to talk, you know. We can start with Saeed Mushiri.
Absolutely. I'll just enable, and then people can just come and talk. Here we go.
Saeed.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for the presenters. I asked question in Q&A for Kia. whether he included Muslim immigrants from Eastern Europe and whether he treated them separately, because that's important probably to identify whether it's a religion or race that matters.
Thank you. Kai?
But yeah, I didn't fully understand the first part of the question. So do I distinguish religion and?
No, did you include Muslim migrant
Muslim migrants from Eastern Europe.
from Islam?
Yes, yes, I did. There are articles about Muslims from Eastern Europe, but it's not many articles. Also, maybe to clarify, which I couldn't due to the little time, is we basically count as Eastern Europe, all Eastern European Union member states. So it does not include the Balkans, which we basically said former Yugoslavia is a different group, which arguably it's a bit subjective.
So they are not included in the migration sample?
No, we have, I'm not sharing anymore, but we have other groups. Of course, there are other groups that we don't include, which also includes, for instance, other African groups that are not Arab Middle East. So there are people from Central or East Africa, Ethiopia, Eritrea, and there are people from the Balkans. But this is a very specific group. Like being from Germany, I can also tell you subjectively, this is a very special group, and it's very different from the broader group of Eastern Europeans. And also other Africans, there's usually distinction between people from Maghreb countries, which are put in one pool with like more other Arab countries, and then people who are from Eritrea, Kenya, Ethiopia, and these more other parts of Africa. But it's a subjective choice. I don't want to say there's no purely scientific basis to say this is one group. So we made this decision as researchers.
Thank you.
No, because your category shows that the type of groups you have, Eastern Europe immigrants are significantly different than other areas, Middle East and Turkey. And religion was the dominant factor there in terms of the attitudes toward immigrants. I was wondering whether when you have religion differences as well as race differences, whether you can distinguish between these two when it comes to Eastern Europe. That would be a good.
Yeah, no, I agree. But how would you look at ethnicity? I don't like the word race. I don't think there's a good scientific basis for it. But how would you measure ethnicity, or would you assign countries to different ethnicities like Slavic or?
I'm not sure ethnicity, but again, Eastern Europe can be categorized into two groups in terms of religions, Muslim Eastern Europes, non-Muslim Eastern Europes, and to see whether you see the difference between these two when it comes to Eastern Europe.
Yeah, just in terms of coding, I mean, there are enough sentences about the different groups, and like Eastern Europeans, it's roughly 10, 12 countries that are in there. But for each individual country, we don't necessarily have a lot of observations. So I guess we could do it descriptively just in the pooled cross-section. But if we would go down to individual countries, there's just not enough variation in the data to say much, which is also why we don't make a claim about just Syrians or Turks. It works just because Turks alone are way more than 2 million, way more with the second generation immigrants. So Turks works because it's such a big group, but for the others, there's little we can say reliably about just one specific country.
Thank you. I also had a question for GholamReza, if I can ask now or later on.
Could you come back? I'm going to the order of the questions, please.
Sure, thanks.
Thank you. The second question is for GholamReza, anonymous, so I read the question. How do you identify Afghani workers in LFS data?
Yes.
Dr. Haddad? Yes.
This is not very hard because if you see the booklet of the questionnaire in the LFS, they ask about the nationality of the people. For example, they ask, are you migrant? Sorry, what is your nationality? if they say that I'm not from Iran, they ask the second question, are you from Afghanistan, Pakistan, or Iraq? So this is very easily identifiable in the LFS, but in HIS, we do not have any question about the nationality of the people. And indeed, HIS is designed to represent the expenditure, monthly expenditure of Iranian nationalities, not for the others. So in HIS, we do not have any information about the nationality, but actually we do not need to, when we are doing this or identification calculation and estimations, we do not need to identify the people if they are from Iran or they are from other nationalities, because we are working on the unemployment status of Iranian worker and the wage level of the Iranian workers. So we use data from HIS for the wages, and we use the LFS for the being employed or unemployed. So when we are doing the models, we exclude the nationality other than Iran. That's what I understood from the question.
Thank you. Thank you. Next question is again for you, Dr. Haddad, from Daniel Rod. Kamya, would you let Daniel to come in and ask question, please?
Absolutely, he can already.
Oh,
Okay,
sorry. Yeah. Hello.
Hi.
1 second. Yeah. No, my question was regarding the health sector roles and stuff like that. If the data is available, many people, obviously, tertiary sector, highly qualified Iranians have left Iran. Do the first generation, second generation Afghan immigrants to Iran, do they ultimately replace educated roles, or are they staying firmly situated in the kind of, manual labor side of things?
Yes. Iranian government rarely and very hard gives the nationality to the other people from the other countries. But we have several Afghan students who are studying in universities, and they are the second or maybe the third generation of the Afghan children. Actually, this is not related to our research, but as I know from the field, I mean the university and the society that I'm living in, if at least one of their parents, father or mother, are Iranian, then they can get the nationality of Iran, and so they can work wherever they like. For example, they are doing a job in the health sector as a physician or nurse, or some of them are teaching in the universities, as I know by my field, not in that data set.
Thank you. We move to next question from Muhammad Asadi. Are you, Kamyar, is he in the room?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much from Professor Keshavarz. I think I clearly just texted about the shocks. Professor Keshavarz, at the beginning of the presentation, he said that Ashraf Ghani administration collapse unpredictable. I think it's a kind of just news issue, but the people of Afghanistan clearly know that after the withdrawal of the US forces, the government will be collapsed. This is one thing. The other thing is, it's not only one shock in 2021, but I clearly remember, I'm from Afghanistan, and I know that we have another important shocks during 2014, when the US troops was supposed to withdraw from Afghanistan, and the GDP declined dramatically if you look at the World Bank data also, because we have another shocks and political crisis and worsening the security situation. And especially 2018 was another milestone. I mean, many people escaped from Afghanistan. Now I don't understand, because I saw many figures, and you just cascaded the waves in 3 parts. Before Taliban, Soviet Union, and etc. I don't mind about the other things, but only important thing is that this last 20 years, I mean, yeah, exactly, this figure is starting from 2005 up to 2021. So I don't understand why you only focus on 2021 while we have another shocks also before 2021.
Yeah. Thank you very much for your very influential question. As you told, and the story of Afghanistan shows, this country was under the attack, and it was a battlefield of several kinds of war, at least over 50 years. But we focused on the shock of 2021 because after this shock, Afghani people, Afghani nationalities reached to the highest level of the ever. So, and after that, in Iran, we had lots of protests, critics, and but the labor market of Iran and the demographic structure of Iran in the recent years are in a bad condition. As in Iran language, they say that we have imbalance in money market, in currency market, and I'm going to say that we have a big imbalance in labor market. And it was important for us to show that presence of Afghani immigrants in the labor market of Iran not only has any negative effect on the wages, but at least it can be modest, not too much. But also they are working to create new jobs for, at least as our research shows, for our women. And they are doing the hard jobs that between Iranian workers, these are not very pleasant. They are not accepted. And the imbalance in human resource of Iran appeared during the recent years. Before that, we had the highest rate of, I can show you, unemployment, but suddenly, you can see here, suddenly the unemployment rate decreased. This is not because we have created new job vacancies. It is due to the shrinkage of the young and middle-aged group of population in Iran. So it was important for us to concentrate to this shock. But as you told, the other shocks can be attractive topics for doing research on. So.
Thank you. We give floor to Nadire. Could you please? Nadire Shamlu, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for both interesting papers. I have a question for Kai. You know, if I understood correctly, or you were looking at your study covers 2011 to 2019, if I'm correct. This was also the
yes,
kind of the
so we have data from 2005 to 2019, but we have a fixed sample and the best coverage from 2013 to 2019.
Yeah. So this is roughly the period where, you know, you had the rise of ISIS and then the daily reports about the atrocities of ISIS, both in the region and outside the region. Everywhere there was a general fear. To what extent may that daily coverage have kind of cast a cloud over the perception of Germans of people who came from that region? And is it possible to kind of isolate the two, isolate these things, or is it just that, you know, again, we have to live with it? You know, there is a contagion effect about what happens in the region onto what how immigrants behave in their host countries. Is that?
Yes,
I was wondering
no,
whether-
that's a very fair point. So they are both global, and I have another paper actually on terror propaganda. There's both global events, like, or let's say the Bataclan event and the events in other countries that are very prominent outside Germany. But then there are also local attacks, like one on the Breitscheidplatz in Berlin, and there are two very prominent knife attacks. And in a sense, I guess the two things we can do is we can change the event window around this date of the beginning of the refugee crisis and these New Year's events, and see how sensitive it is to this event window. And the second thing we can do, which, and I take note of this, so thanks a lot for the comments, we can probably explicitly exclude articles that mention terror. But I think it's probably very hard to fully exclude that global ISIS terror activities had any effects on that. I think what seems clear is that the timing that we observe, like when the sentiment of the Turks deteriorates, that this didn't come after any specific other events. So it's really in line, just happening after this New Year's assault. And that's a good point. Would you have other ideas? What you would do about it? I'm always happy to implement more checks.
No, I don't have any idea, but I just, I mean, I travel a lot and I have lived also in Europe quite a bit. And I know that there is, I don't want to call it Islamophobia, but certainly kind of a little bit of a view toward Muslims and Muslim, you know, whatever religion and everything else. And the period that you are looking at is, you know, is the height of all those negative trends coming all together. And so I was kind of, you know, interested to see whether the perception of this group of immigrants versus, because at the same time there was a big, you know, I mean, there were quite a lot of people from Christian, as an earlier question pointed out, Christian, let's say Eastern Europeans coming and so on, and they are not necessarily any more, I would say, compliant or law-abiding as this other group. But to what extent these other external and externalities that this group didn't really have under control may have had an impact on the perception.
Thanks a lot again. I can say two more things to this. The first is that initially really the perception, and we show this in the analysis, the perception also of the refugees and the Arab Middle East as a group was very positive in Germany. So it really, and was positive and actually improving up until this New Year assault events. And then the second is that, not to misunderstand what I think we find in the paper, this is because the main result is this divergence between Eastern Europeans and Turks. But at least from anything objective that we observe, it's not that Turks actually changed their behavior or that any systematically economic integration of Turks deteriorated. So that's why we link to this paper about stereotyping. So it's actually, as you said, like a large number of people, they didn't do anything. And the Turks as a group, there's some long-term changes, but there's no obvious change in this period. But because of stereotyping, people seem to view them as being in the same pot, in the same group as the Arab Middle East group. So the sentiment is linked and also deteriorates, which is not the case for the Eastern Europeans. And we have planned 3 sets of experiments to really pin this down because we cannot fully show this in the observational data. So in these experiments, we really want to show first, is there stereotyping across groups? Then is this stereotyping stronger within economy or cultural themes? To in the end, find out also, to what extent is this driven by a common religion compared to what someone else said, maybe a common ethnicity? Let's say you look similar.
Thank you. We move to next question. Madam Chair, Takin, could you please ask your question? Are you there, Madam Chair? Okay.
Can
Yes.
you hear me now?
Yes,
Okay.
we hear you.
Well, my question, Dr. Keshavarz Haddad. First of all, I want to thank him and all his co-authors because they have gone through so much actual data analysis and the statistics. My question is, and given quantitative interpretation, which is wonderful. Mine probably is a more qualitative one and a more recent one. I want to find out the impact of politics and economics. So after the second coming of the in Afghanistan, the second coming of the Taliban, I think there was a wave of people leaving the country. It was more because of the actual or perceived fear of extreme religion and Shariat and so on. So there was a political wave or a wave of migration because of politics. And then it is what I've heard and what I've seen in newspapers. That's the question whether this is really true or not by Dr. Haddad and his co-workers. And that apparently as Iranian economic conditions are getting worse, and as indicated by the value of Iranian currency compared with that in Afghanistan, apparently there is a reverse migration of Afghans going back from Iran into Afghanistan. Now, if these two statements, which are my impression from newspapers and media, if these are correct, that will be an indication of the impact of politics on migration and the reverse migration because of economics. I don't wonder if this is true or not, and if they can expand on it. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Madam Chair. Actually, there is not the Afghani people are not very eager to come back to Afghanistan after this invasion that happened actually by Taliban to Afghanistan. We know that's correct. We have a devaluation of money in Iran, and there is a revaluation of money in Afghanistan. But Afghani people are living in Iran with low cost, with the minimum facilities that they have. But besides this low wage that they can earn, they are gaining from the school, from the health system, from the subsidized bread, subsidized energy. So they can compromise this reduction in their purchasing power in real, and sometimes they can send, most of them are sending money to Afghanistan by saving the remittance. The World Bank reported that there is over $200 million last year, the year before the last year, remittance that Afghani people sent from Iran to the Afghanistan. So still, they like to live in Iran and they stay here, although there is even the police force that they are forcing the Afghani people for coming back to Afghanistan, but they are resisting on staying in Iran. This is.
Thank you very much. That was very clarifying. Thank you.
Thank you. We move to Hashim Pesaran. Could you please ask your question? Thank you.
Difficult question.
We don't hear you. You are muted.
Sorry. I just was saying that my question is really related to the methodology used, which seems a bit difficult to accept. Number one, as I pointed out, that the control provinces are not really random. The government selected them for a reason. And that is not clear whether that would affect the outcome. I mean, they have to know, you have to have include in your analysis, technically, a decision rule, why government chose those provinces. And the second question is, these provinces, in terms of work conditions, are very different. And in particular, the composition of industries and, the agricultural share of agriculture, I think you're dealing with different skill levels. There's lots of heterogeneity. And I know people do these things, but I think it's, one has to be very careful not to make very strong conclusions. So I'm just concerned. A lot of people do these techniques without thinking. Sorry, I don't want. I mean, I know it's a lot of work involved. I appreciate all the data analysis done, but some of these issues maybe have to be. And the other one is migration flow of native Iranians across provinces in seek of better jobs or better, better pay, or some provinces which are high unemployment. People may leave. So therefore, how do you allow for the migration across provinces while you're dealing with one migration from outside, which then spread in particular areas? But what about the internal migration? Because the economic condition of the country is not uniform across all these provinces or over time, for that matter.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for this great question. I think this question is for me, yes?
Yeah,
Yes.
for you, yeah, I guess so.
Yes,
Yes, it is.
If you don't want to be
happy to
for
hear
you,
you,
can
Dr.
ignore it.
Pesaran, and thank you very much for organizing this very famous IIEA. All of the credit of this IIEA goes to you and your colleagues, the godfathers. Thank you very much. Yeah, your first question is very important for us, and actually it is very important for the Ministry of Interior and the High Council of Security in Iran. It goes back to the first round of Taliban rule in Afghanistan. After withdrawing the Taliban from Afghanistan by the US troops. It was in the same time, it's a very close time with the collapse of Saddam Hussein's regime in the west of Iran and establishing military bases in the north of Iran and Azerbaijan. So it was a challenge for Iranian government how to control the Afghani people and how to manage their threat. So they decided to concentrate Afghani people in the central part of Iran. And because of that, you are seeing that the west of Iran and north of Iran and east of Iran were prohibited provinces for residing the Afghani peoples. But as I told, the Sistan Balochistan is prohibited, but it is because this is the pathway to the other provinces from Afghanistan. In the LFS and HIS, in LFS, sorry, we can see a few people who are living but transitory in Sistan Balochistan. But Khorasan-e-Razavi is a big city and big province. Because of presence of Imam Reza's holy shrine in Khorasan-e-Razavi, it is permitted for the Afghani people. So choosing these provinces, as you told, are not random. It was a big challenge, and we were mindful of this problem that you correctly raised. And because of that, we tried to define several control groups and several treatment groups. And after all, for example, we started from the biggest number of provinces, except Sistan and Balochistan as our treatment group. Then we little by little dropped some of these provinces from our treatment group, but the result remained unchanged, or at least the result had very modest change. And we did the same with the control group. Again, the result remained unchanged. So we are not very sure that this is the cause, the pure cause, but our calculations and estimations confirmed that the effect of, in several scenarios, the effect of presence of Afghans in Iran has a negative impact on the wages and a positive impact on the creating employment, but for some subpopulations, not for all. Thank you very much.
Thank
Hashim, do you have
We
any
have
suggestion to improve the work? I know that you have lots of great ideas.
Kamyar, can we go over time few minutes or not?
No, I'm just kidding.
No.
Of course you can.
Saeed Moshiri, you had a question for Dr. Keshavarz.
Yes, thanks. Thank you, Dr. Keshavarz, for the interesting work. My
I'm
question
really
was,
sorry. I need to drop out sharp. Apologies.
No worries at all.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the good presentation, and thanks a lot for being here.
Thank you for the question. I'll take note of the comments, and if you have any more questions, I'll put them. Yeah, no, I took note of the questions in the chat. So thanks, everyone. Sorry, I need to leave, but
Thanks
my
a lot.
kids are sitting there.
Good luck with the
go
movie.
over for dinner.
Thank you very much.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Can I
Yes,
continue?
please.
Yeah, my question was about the wage rate for Afghanese workers. I was wondering, where do you get that data? And also, many Afghanis work in informal section of the labor market. They are not registered, they don't get benefits, and they are underpaid. I was wondering whether you separate those, identify those workers from formal section, or if not, how do they affect your results?
Yes. Thank you very much. I'm very happy to hear you, Dr. Saeed. And your question is very valid question. And actually, I should say that it's the FAQ for me, because I have presented this work for Wizard Keshvar. I mean, the Ministry of Interior, the Organization of Budget and Planning, and Ministry of Finance and others. Actually, we are using Iranian, the data for Iranian household members, and I mean the employed people in the household level. And you know that when the questionnaire of Statistical Center of Iran comes to one typical household, they never ask about their being formal or for example, the head of household is working in a formal or informal sector. Just they say that, are you working? How many hours have you worked during the last week? So this is not a big concern for our work. And we did need to separate the Afghani, and I mean the non-Iranian nationalities from our sample, because when we working on the unemployment probability, we were focusing on the Iranian people. But we have an item, a record, a field in the LFS, which can identify the nationality of the people. So there is not any question. And actually, we didn't need to identify the where they are working for the wage equation. And actually, the wages, the survey that are done for wages comes from IIEA. In all of them, the Iranian people, the individuals are Iranian households, not the other nationality, households from the other nationalities. But for the unemployment position or status, we need to know that what is the nationality of the household members and the household head. And the field of nationality helped us to do this. Said, let me know if I couldn't clarify it.
Yeah, thank you. It's over time, so probably we can chat later on. Thank you.
Yeah,
Sure.
thank you very much. We don't have any more questions on Q&A. Dr. Farzanegan has some questions on chat. Would you like to follow up on email, or you want to discuss it
No,
now?
I can do it per email because.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone. We had a very good session, good presentations. I look forward to see you all in future webinars. Thanks a lot. Have a good
Thanks
day.
to all. Thank you, Aida.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aida. Thank you, Mohammed Jun. And see you in a month's time, as usual.
Well, the next webinar would be in May about the Pahlavi development outcomes.
Very good. Second Wednesday in May.
Yeah.
Same time. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Bye now.
Bye. Bye, everyone. Thanks.